Evening. How are you doing? You seem to sound surprised by that. Why is that? That you're getting along okay? Really good. Hanging in there. It is the challenges we go through life that make us grow, isn't it? I have had more blessings than I am entitled to. I am a lucky woman. Oh, I used to see, well, they have them at like Disneyland, but they used to have them at the museum in Chicago when we were kids. We saw them. They had an old historic alley and then set up like a street would be the Museum of Science and Industry, I believe it was. It was pretty impressive. Look through and see how the houses were. All those little, I don't know, I've learned not to look at anybody's life and go, geez, I wish I had that, or, because they'll have challenges that come with getting there or being that, so. Oh, Lord. So are your days are winding down for your kingdom?
They are. I'm really pleased. Bill, agency is really
It'd be nice. You know, I'm going to have to give you a little credit on that one. He's done quite a bit as well. I wouldn't say way more worthy, but he has definitely been quite a player in Englewood, and I'm glad to see this happen. See how political I could be? I could agree with you and still not accept your entire premise that somehow you were not entitled because you were. But I'm glad. Seemed to have fun with it, and Linda did, and enjoyed it.
That was an actual microphone? I guess.
One mic.
Don't touch it. Is this the microphone? Okay.
No, it'll work. It'll work because.
Hello? Hello? Does it pick up me? Oh wait.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Pick up me. I can't.
What's up?
What's up?
Everyone was like,
Alright, we'll just put that there.
there is no risk free level up.
Yeah. Let's do it. Is this mine?
Yeah. There's no
Like
internet.
Of course it was Ellie.
I was gonna say.
Oh, I hate pictures.
Maybe with this one. Hey, got them.
No.
You want me to stand next to you?
Everybody. That's going to make everyone.
You want me to just lay it? Alright, tobacco free on 3. 1, 2, 3. Tobacco free. Wait, is that one?
This is my hair. I'm Kylie. I'm in 8th grade. I'm Reagan.
Thanks, sir.
I'm in 2nd grade.
Oh, that's stop it.
Hayden.
What about the live cams?
I'm in 3rd
More.
grade.
And where they can put them?
Yeah, you think.
Actually think
This is the youngest member of our
Probably.
Yeah. Like,
Zebra?
yes.
I'm not gonna be able to.
I'm Reagan and I'm in 2nd grade.
Unless
Should we like pass it along? Or
it's just a study session.
Ellie. So,
Okay, I'm fine with that. Not much.
Yeah.
what? That's scary. Cool.
Really? You're gonna look back at that and like your.
I know. Yeah.
That's what it's called.
That show.
Like, I always think of the stop, but I was like, nope, that's not it.
Ellie.
And really.
Ian was in 6th grade.
I was here in 5th grade.
Ian.
I'm
Same.
really
Because
scared. I
we
know.
were too busy.
I know.
Is this getting picked up? Yeah. Probably. They're recording us.
Yeah.
No, really?
No, it's Jesus. Kylie,
What's up?
you were right.
I'm good. How are you?
What?
I have your mail. Just ignoring them. Oh.
Trying not to look bad.
Did they move us?
Look at you go away 1 week and lots of mail, huh? Right? Okay.
Hi.
Go away.
Good.
Guys, when you're speaking, like, no, I did not. Towards the mic. Talk like with a bigger voice.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
Good.
I wish I had half of their energy.
I think so. I need to go too. Yeah. I want to check. I want to make sure that the mics are
Write
working.
10 paragraphs.
Last pages. I'm sure every IT will be in here pretty soon.
Yeah, but for them it's left to right.
I'm not nervous. I'm just tired.
Oh, that was that?
I mean, like,
Was it here?
it might be weird for us. Oh, really? It's been clumpy, right?
I think tomorrow.
I know
If
where
it
you
was
live.
tomorrow, I would have
I know you do.
practice right now. So,
That's why I watched what I said.
yeah, that'd be a lot.
That'd be a little bit too much.
Going right from here to
I'm in sixth grade.
There's no risk of level of exposure just to get hit.
30.
Even short-term exposure could
Yeah.
heart attack.
40% of children are, well, once we get going, I'm sure.
You know what? That's like,
Oh, there's 2 tables of them.
I was laughing and then like into my water bottle. You make
Yeah. There's a giant cut in them too because I woke up and my dog pounced on my face and her nail went into it. It was slimy. Or anywhere.
Yeah, that's yeah.
boop.
Wow. Lots of stuff came this week. This is very fun. Hi, Trudy. Julie, thank you so much for all of this. That one there. What's up? This is probably running late. You guys missing two last days? Yeah. I had a chance to. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How about you? It went I was home. Backyard a little bit, if that counts for anything. One of my favorite places.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Lots of goodies. Oh. Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the Englewood City Council study session this Monday, April 1st, and we're definitely here, no fooling. Tonight, we have several things on the agenda for the study session before our regular meeting, and the first up is the Smoke and Vapor-Free Parks proposal. Looking for information and direction tonight, Council. Parks and Recreation Library Acting Director Dave Lee is here, along with a number of students who've been working on this to present and discuss the Tobacco and Vape-Free Parks in Englewood. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Good evening. As you can see, I brought a lot of my friends here tonight. All these students are from the Englewood Leadership Academy, and about a year ago at this time, these students came to us in the Parks and Rec Commission and talked about the hazards of secondhand smoke and vaping. They also spoke about regulating tobacco and vape use in the parks as a means to regulate exposure to tobacco and to prevent students from getting on using tobacco and tobacco products as well. And then in the May meeting, Jessica Salas from Tri-County Health came back and discussed with the Parks and Rec Commission what it would require to make Englewood Englewood Parks tobacco and vape free. It was agreed to move forward, excuse me, on a survey to see what the residents might be interested in doing such a project. And then in July, we came forward again, and the survey was talked about, and then we started administering that in August through September, about 2 months worth. And I believe in your packets you also have those results. Jessica also came back on the October 11th Parks and Rec Commission with the survey results and talked about the alternatives. And it was agreed upon at that point in time and supported unanimously from the Parks and Rec Commission to bring this forward to City Council. And tonight these kids are before us and they're going to do a presentation. So with that, I'm going to let the kids do their thing and step out of the mic.
All right. Students, I think you all have a mic at your desks too, right? So you have to speak up really loud for the people who are watching at home. And we do have people watching, so you've got a larger crowd than what's in the room tonight.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Salas, and I'm a chronic disease prevention specialist with Tri-County Health Department. This group actually formed a few years ago, and the students at that time decided that tobacco in Englewood Parks was an issue that they wanted to tackle. Just like Mr. Lee mentioned, last year at this time, they approached the commission and gave this presentation that you're going to hear tonight based on all of their own research, and they are the ones who are bringing this proposal forward to you. They're here with their club sponsor, Julie White of Englewood Leadership Academy, to give you a little bit more information about tobacco and vape-free parks for Englewood.
Thank you, Jesse. We could not have done this without the partnership from Tri-County Health, so we're really grateful to you guys. I am Julie White, and I'm a teacher at Englewood Leadership Academy. And about 5 years ago, I was asked if I wanted to sponsor the Tobacco Prevention Army. And I said, of course I do. What a great cause. What do we do? So we found out that this group can go around the community and present at different health and wellness events, which we've done at different elementary schools throughout the District of Englewood to present information about the dangers of tobacco. We've also done several campus cigarette butt pickups and park cleanups. And last year we held an event at our school called Kick Butts Day, where we have this banner up front that you can see the students at Englewood High School, Englewood Leadership Academy, and Englewood Middle School got to sign a pledge to be the first generation to end the use of tobacco. The next step, the group decided they wanted to take on bringing this issue of tobacco-free parks to the city of Englewood. And that's what we're here to do, to present tonight, the dangers of tobacco to our parks, to our bodies, and how that behavior normalization impacts us as a community. So one thing that we're really proud of, we have a couple of videos we're going to show, and then the kids are going to do the presenting. The first video was made by a student who could not be here tonight, but she wanted her voice to be heard, and it's just a little preview of what the club has done together. We definitely want our parks to be tobacco-free, and you'll hear more reasoning for that to come from the students momentarily. The second video we're very proud of, the students created a few years ago a public service announcement with the help of Tri-County Health. The students wrote the script, they are the actors in the film, and you'll see it's filmed right here at a local Englewood park. You may have seen it air on local channels. It's still airing today. So please check out and enjoy our public service announcement created by these awesome students. We thank you guys for your time, and we'll turn it over to our student portion of the presentation.
Hi, my name is Ian Sabiak, and I'm in 8th grade.
Hi, I'm Raylene, and I'm in 6th grade. I'm Kylie, and I'm in 8th grade.
My name's Hayden, and I'm in 7th grade.
My name's Ricky, and I'm in 7th grade. Hi, I'm Justice, and I'm in 7th grade.
I'm Kira, and I'm in 6th grade.
I'm KK, and I'm in 7th grade.
I'm Liam, and I'm in 6th grade.
We are all students at Englewood Leadership Academy.
We want tobacco and vape-free parks in Englewood because many children are affected by tobacco and vape use in our parks. Also at Englewood parks. With the help of Tri-County Health, a survey went out to 362 Englewood residents, and a majority of respondents agree or strongly agree that various aspects of tobacco and vape use in Englewood parks are a problem.
Now we hand the presentation over to Kylie, Reagan, and Hayden on facts on secondhand smoke.
There is no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke, and even short-term exposure could potentially increase the risk of heart attack.
40% of children are exposed to secondhand smoke each year. About 41,000 of those are to childs, and
98% of respondents from the Tri-County Health Survey observed some form of tobacco or vape use in Englewood parks.
if you look at this infographic, you will see the effects of secondhand smoke, things such as heart attacks, COPD, and stomach cancer. Secondhand smoke can also cause lung cancer, which seriously affects people with asthma. My brother and I both have asthma, and if we were around people smoking, we could actually end up in the hospital. Also, the pollution of secondhand smoke is 10 times more than what diesel cars produce, which leads us to our second point, environmental impact.
you ever see a role model smoking and start to think it was normal or even cool? Well, that is what behavior and normalization is. It is when you see someone doing something, you start to think it is normal or cool, and you may even want to try it yourself.
So when you see someone smoking, you at least when you were younger thought it was cool. And during school hours, even at the elementary schools, there are sometimes adults and parents smoking and setting a bad example for everyone around them. Also, when you see someone buying a pack of cigarettes, maybe at your local 7-Eleven, you may want to buy a pack yourself and try out smoking. In fact, smoking caused 83% of lung cancer victims to be affected in 2010. Not only can you be affected, but those around you may be affected as well. Now we lead into the conclusion.
These are the cities that already have passed the tobacco-free rule in Colorado. So why not Englewood? Now, these following cities are Glenwood Springs, Greenwood Village, and Boulder. Thank you for listening. We hope you will seriously consider our proposal for tobacco-free parks in Englewood to support healthy environment, habits, and kids. We wanted to let you know that 71% of Englewood residents already either agree or strongly agree to the policy of tobacco-free parks.
First of all, I'd like to ask if there are any questions for the students.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Barentine has a question.
How did you come to the 71% conclusion for our community?
We found that on a website or on our own website where our sponsor took it from our survey, and that was from all of the people that took our survey, and that was all Englewood residents.
Do you know how many people responded to the survey? I'd love to have that information. That's very nice that you guys did it. Oops.
We have 62 Englewood residents.
That's about as many as we get for a whole lot of money that when we send out a citizen survey, so that's a pretty good number. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, Council? Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly commendable for all the students. I'd like to start there. The question is for Mr. Lee, though. Is there an enforcement component to this? I noticed the mention of the signs. Is there an enforcement component, and if so, what department would that be done by in Englewood, and are there any penalties that have been considered?
Not necessarily enforcement component unless I think either the police were called during an issue out in the parks or code enforcement happened to be by and asked people not to smoke or vape out there. Beyond that, it was more peer pressure and the signage to get people to refrain from smoking in the parks.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it's not a ticketable offense or something of that nature?
It depends on whether we would move forward and develop an ordinance for this. Then I think it would be ticketable.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for everything. And thank you, students and your supporters, your parents, your administrators. This is fantastic. Really happy to see you here and so active. Mr. Lee, I too had a question about enforcement and just to what end that would go. Mr. Quest has already mentioned it. I'm also curious to what end is Tri-City Health supporting the cost of the signage? So is the maintenance included in that, and is it for a time period? Is it as long as the signage is present?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure we actually worked all of that out.
Okay.
They definitely were going to fund the signage,
right?
But I don't believe that they would be maintaining the signs. Can you answer that?
Please.
Absolutely.
Please do.
So for tobacco prevention efforts such as this, we at Tri-County are able to help fund that type of signage, also any type of communication, media campaigns, community education around this. And so in terms of like the maintenance of that as well, that would be something that could be revisited when that time comes and see what we could be able to do.
That's great to hear. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, that's about it. Yep.
I'd certainly love to see that component of advertising and the continued education. We can include the students as we keep doing that too.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Other council members? Member Barentine is next, but others wanted to ask anything before? Okay, Member Barentine.
I needed clarification when you answer Councilmember Cuesta's question. You made it sound as if there was already some active effort going on to try to get people not to smoke in the park. Is that correct?
No, that's not necessarily correct.
Okay,
Not today,
so it was just
not
the
currently.
tents you were talking in?
Yes.
I thought maybe that was something that was already being tried, but you were just saying that's the method that you would use for some enforcement is
In the
more of a
future.
peer pressure kind of thing?
Yes.
And then for the rest of it, it seems like we're kind of at the beginning phases of this. There's a lot of other issues that might need to be vetted and flushed out, but this is the beginning piece of this.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I won't ask more detailed questions because we're just at the onset of getting this started. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Member Martinez.
Thank you. Just in terms of signage, on this kind of chart we have here, it says adequate signage. How do we determine how many signs are adequate? Is it per like park square footage, or how do we kind of determine that?
I think that just depends on the park and the size of it. Certainly places like Bellevue that have multiple parking lots, multiple entries, is going to require much more signage than, say, Emerson Park, which is about an acre. So it's going to vary from park to park. But we would definitely place them at the more prominent entrances into parks.
Thank you.
Member Sierra.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I have a big smile on my face because I've seen a lot of the run-throughs of this presentation, and this one was the best one yet. So it was a very impressive job tonight. I do have a question regarding the municipalities that have already put some type of enforcement for smoking in parks, and I noticed a few that are in the areas such as Greenwood Village. We have Arvada, Wheat Ridge. Any idea if we have any other municipalities that are looking at to do something similar for that as well in the surrounding area?
Where?
So at the time, so Greeley has recently passed this as well, but in terms of other municipalities at this time, not necessarily. But you never know what might sneak up.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next stage would be for us to decide how we want to move this forward, if we do it all. And I'm going to kick it off with also saying what a great job. I was at the Parks and Rec Committee meeting when some of you were there a year ago, and you've done even more research, developed an even stronger case for it. I loved that you talked about the normalizing theory, which is really, we know, really powerful at young ages, and particularly in a place that children spend their time, which is parks. But then also the survey that you did really backs up some things that you hadn't done before. So I appreciate the work that you've put into that, because I know it's not easy to do research and to actually get something from it. And 360 is pretty good for something that's not well known about. So I appreciate the hard work you've been putting into this. Hope you've been learning a ton. I'm very interested in seeing this come forward to a study session with us all to look at possible what some laws could look like. I'm not at all bothered by enforcement of this. There are many places, actually many things that are not enforceable, like a stop sign at the end of my street that people just, the police never sit there at the end of York Street, which is one street long, to see if anybody follows that sign, but they do. We all stop there. And there's many things like that in our city. So I think this is one of those cases where we know the impact of social impact could be so positive. Once you norm it in, I come from a university campus that normed this in. It took us a while, but people don't smoke on campus at the University of Denver anymore. Many campuses with large campuses, 30, 40,000 have done this, and people are pretty compliant. And when they're not, young people who actually have some asthma or those who are allies tell people, please, would you please not do this? Because I have friends who can't walk into this building going through this smoke every day to study, which is what I tend to do when I'm a faculty member seeing someone violate. And usually people are very compliant. They go, oh, I'm sorry. And they may just have forgotten. So I would love to see this come forward with some kind of sort of a beginning stage of what it could look like so that we can talk more specifically about it and ask the questions of the details. Member Martinez, you're next.
Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you to the students. It was a great presentation, and I really appreciate you taking the initiative to bring something forward like this and to work together to come up with the best approach and for the persistence. I know these things take a long time. You did a lot of work just to get here, and so thank you for sticking with it and doing all the additional research and steps that you did to come here. I know these things don't happen quickly, so really appreciate your perseverance through this and appreciate the support that they've received from everyone along the way also. And the over 350 respondents is pretty good for a survey that was just at, I think it was the rec center, library, a couple of other places, so that survey turnout is pretty good. It was really helpful to see the data. So just thank you for your enthusiasm and persistence and information on this. And I would love to see it come forward to the next steps, maybe talk through what enforcement looks like. So I'm really supportive of this, and thank you all so much for your hard work and bringing this forward to us.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Yes, I would like to thank you all for your hard work on this and for coming forward to present to City Council. Just out of curiosity, I mean, you all could share, or maybe if a few of you would like to share, have you been on the committee since the very beginning, and how did you get to be on this committee?
Real quick, if they speak, have them pass the puck. Have them pass the puck when they speak.
So maybe put your hand up. How many were on it when I saw you do this a year ago? There are like 3, yeah. So there's several new people too. And we probably have enough time to hear from maybe 2 of you to say why you got involved in this, and pull the mic up close so that the people at home can hear it. If that's okay, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm just worried about we're past time already.
That's great.
Anybody want to?
I do.
Go ahead.
Yes, I joined Tobacco Prevention Army because I saw that my mom smoked, and that whenever I smelled that smoke, I got really scared because I don't want anything to happen to anyone.
So lived experience. Anyone else want to share? Okay.
Well, my dad smoked when I was younger, so I kind of realized that it wasn't okay, so I always kind of hated the idea of it, so I joined to try to help stop it.
Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming forward to present this.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to see this come forward in a study session?
I'm not ready to commit to that yet.
Okay. Member Sierra.
Yes, I'm ready to see this move forward to study session. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into the details. And again, I just want to thank you guys again. You guys did a fantastic job. It's not easy speaking into these podiums or into the microphones and speaking to the podium in front of us here. So you guys did an amazing job. It took me until last year to actually do this. So you guys are 13, 14 years old. So you guys are 25 years ahead of me. So great job.
I'm not sure who is next on here, so I'm just going to start at the top. Member Barentine. Member Barentine, you're next, unless I didn't click it off.
When we have events like this, projects like this, it's nice to see that you guys have a variety of ages and levels of coming in. I think what the Mayor Pro Tem asked was a good question. So I'd like to know how somebody gets involved and what kind of recruitment you do, or is it just open? And I'm asking that question in that this has to be sustainable. If we're looking for both a component of people in the community adding some social pressure, and then there's going to be some money spent, and whether we do some kind of enforcement, we want to make sure that the group that kind of is the catalyst for this, that there's a second and third and fourth generation of this so that we have some backup and that it's a sustainable project that keeps going and isn't just the issue of the day and then it dies away and we just spent money on signs and people, it's not being backed up with the energy in the community. So can you tell me why you joined this group? were they open? Did they take membership? Or did you just know about it and they took you?
I knew about it because my stepsister did it.
Oh, good.
And also, I believe my sister did. And most of my like older friends have done it. And basically, it was, I think, yeah, open to join.
Is this the extent of your group? I mean, is this the whole group, or do you have like, is this just a presenting group? Okay.
Yeah, we are missing a few students, but we have students 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Englewood Leadership Academy, and it's open to students to join at any point of their time with us. And then we often encourage them, if they go on to Englewood High School, to stay involved. And we had a few, one of the founding members stay involved. He was part of the group that was with us 5 years ago.
Oh,
so
nice.
We've been trying to kind of keep it sustainable, but it is, you know, an ever-changing group of students with leadership coming from the 8th graders if they've done it all 3 years, and then brand new students coming in as 6th graders, which we have a variety of tonight. And then I'm kind of the constant. I've been a part of it since the...
Well, everything's ever changing. You're going to get older just like I am, and new people coming in. So I wanted to see how you were getting new members in and how sustainable this group would be, because if we put the money, the time, and the effort in, I'd like to see that we've got something that we can kind of keep going and it just doesn't wane. So thanks for answering that. To the mayor's question, I would like to go ahead and get some additional information. Anytime we're expecting an enforcement piece, I think we have to be very cognizant of that and how we're going to handle that. So I would like to get some more information, but I would like to move forward with it. And you all did a beautiful job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would be thrilled to move forward with this and look forward to discussing issues like enforcement. We've made no decision, so there is no enforcement piece, of course. We'll be discussing all of those details. I look forward to having that conversation or those conversations and seeing where we can land. I see this as a very positive movement in our city that will live on for years and years and years to come. I think there will be no forgetting the group of students that came to council this night and have done all of this work and that got this program started. I'm just very proud of you all and grateful that you're here tonight. Thank you.
Member Martinez.
Thank you. My last question is, if we are to move forward on this, what would be your ideal implementation solution? Like, in your ideal mind, what would it look like? Maybe we don't know yet.
No.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I would be happy to help with as well. Just working on implementation, communication of the policy, cessation resources for those that do smoke in the community, because those are people that we love too. You know, we want to support them and we never want them to feel unwelcome in our parks. And so we want to make sure that all those resources are available. And so that type of toolkit would be something that I'd be happy to help supply everybody with resources and just give you all as much information as possible for the implementation of this.
Wonderful. And then would this group help with some of the implementation, or do we imagine that there would be ongoing participation from this group?
I would certainly believe so, yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Cuesta, would you like to weigh in on whether this comes forward to study session?
You bet. Well, thank you for the survey results. That goes a long way. It does seem that there's enough evidence here in the survey that the conversation should continue and gather more details. I do think there's some things to be worked out, but certainly happy to continue the conversation. And to conclude, again, a world of credit to the students for doing this. I really admire your participation, so young, to echo what several other folks up here have said. It's really commendable, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have enough people who want to see something come forward, and so just for the sake of the students, what happens next then is that staff will go back and look at some possible ways we could write an ordinance on this and what it would look like, what the background would be for that, and different options we would have, and particularly for enforcement. I was certainly not saying that we don't plan on enforcement, but I do think that sometimes we let that be an obstacle for us in doing the right thing when really, people really do want to comply with the best thing for one another. So they'll bring it forward, and I don't know how long that will take. Hopefully we can stay in touch to tell you to come and watch a study session, and we'll debate it a bit, whether we want to see it come to a vote or not. And then it comes to a regular meeting if there's enough of us saying we want it. And still then, we can all decide differently and vote yes or no. So it's got a process to go through, as I'm sure you've read in your civics or heard in your civics classes. And thank you for all the work you've done, and hope that you stay engaged through the whole process.
Thank you, Council. We'll continue to research this and then move it forward and bring it back to you.
Thank you. Nice work. Are you going to stay? Next up is, second item is a short-term rental brief update in our information direction position. It's going to be opening it up for information direction community development. Planning Manager Wade Burkholder is here to present to give us this update. You're certainly welcome to stay and listen to this, because it will have an impact on your future one way or the other.
Wait for a few minutes or just right?
I think go ahead. They're quiet. They're you know, students are good when they leave rooms, right?
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm here to provide you an update to the short-term rental discussions and happenings that have been going on the past few months. Short-term rentals, in the grand scheme of things, are a new phenomenon in the land use world, to the point where most communities' zoning codes have no way to specifically address the short-term rental phenomenon. Most worldwide, nationally, locally in the Denver metro, a lot of communities are struggling with what to do with the short-term rental. You know, it's the rental of your home or a room in your home for one night to 29 nights, 30 nights. Anything less than 30 days is typically considered a short-term rental. So Englewood is not alone in this world of struggling with how to regulate these. What's been happening over the past 8 months or so is the Planning and Zoning Commission have been discussing an option, some regulations for future consideration by you all, with a way to regulate short-term rentals. Right now, as you know, we don't have specific short-term rentals as a use in our code, but we do have the clause of visitor accommodation in our code. So they're somewhat similar. So we have been looking at that route when we're talking about enforcement and things like that, as these being visitor accommodations, until we can get some sort of regulation specifically dealing with short-term rentals on the books. So we're working very hard on drafting some regulations, the Planning Commission, with regard to this subject. Tomorrow evening, as you all are aware, we're having our short-term rental town hall. We do have other jurisdictions as well as members of the planning staff going to be present to present their findings and their dealings, their lessons learned with the short-term rental topic. And hopefully we will be able to, you know, have some guidance that we can learn from other communities when we're drafting these final regulations. The communities, City and County of Denver, City of Lakewood, and us, we will provide just a short overview of what each of our communities is going through. There will be several other communities in the audience that will have offered to give their viewpoints on short-term rentals. Some that have adopted regs, some that have chosen not to adopt regs, and some in our boat where we're still trying to discuss and figure out what route we're going to go with them. So tomorrow evening will be a very good learning experience for not only the Planning Commission, but everybody in the community to come ask questions, find out how other communities have responded and whatnot. Just to let you, bring this to your attention, whether we have regulations or not, short-term rentals are likely here to stay. So whether we have regs that permit them and track them in an orderly way, or whether we don't, the enforcement part of this is going to be difficult. There are many potential enforcement opportunities we can look at, and that's going to be part of the Planning Commission recommendation, is what they feel the best route for monitoring these are. It's a little different in this regard because we're talking about how people are using their inside of their house, and we can't just go in and look at what they're doing. So we have to find some other type of route for the enforcement. There are third-party companies that monitor the websites for communities. There are, any hosts of other opportunities that can be looked at in terms of enforcement. It's difficult because you look through 5-10 different websites trying to find addresses that come up, and you don't know if they're addresses that have expired listings or some bed and breakfasts use those sites. So it's a very different kind of enforcement process for short-term rentals. But we're doing our due diligence and learning from other communities to find out what has worked for them. And the Planning Commission, after this meeting tomorrow night, will meet one more time on April 16th to finalize what the language is they wish to present forward at a public hearing. And then through that process, it will eventually come to City Council for additional input sessions and public hearings and so forth. So we are working diligently on getting this language in a fashion where we can move forward, and the part dealing with enforcement is going to be part of that discussion. And so, once we have that language, as I said, it'll come back to you all.
Interim City Manager Hargrove, you have more to add? Thank you.
I asked Wade if I could step in at the end of his presentation and clarify that even though we're working forward toward clear language on short-term rentals, we're not without some support in the code about visitor accommodations. So we have people have brought to our attention and your attention some violations of those visitor accommodation, and we have moved those enforcement activities into the municipal court. So we are taking action on some steps, but are looking forward to a more comprehensive and consistent action moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we now have questions from council. If both of you want to stay, or one of you, I'm not sure. Member Barentine?
We also have regulations on bed and breakfast and boarding houses, so I would beg to differ that I don't think that this is new. It's just a new name for it. All three, the visitor accommodation, the bed and breakfast, and the boarding houses, are limited in the zoning that they're able to do. How do we regulate them now, or is there any regulation on them?
We would regulate if we had a citizen call or complaint that would come into us and we didn't.
Has there been any? Do you know of any that are existing, and whether there have been any concerns?
Bed and breakfasts and
bed and breakfast, boarding house, and visitor accommodations are all in our code right now.
Right.
As is not having like multifamily in a single residential area, which we've already had brought up as part of this issue as well. So all of those are already in our code, and I need to know how we're enforcing them currently before we start discussing how we're going to move forward and enforce something else.
Once we received a complaint, we would follow up and try to contact the owner to get more information and investigate that way.
And has that been going on?
Yes.
Okay, can council get an update on some of that activity then? Because we've certainly had examples of it not, so I want to know how we're changing that over.
And the enforcement that we're working on is relatively recent. I'd have, because it is in the municipal court, I'll provide information that's consistent with the legal process. But we'll follow up on that for sure.
And I guess I also want to just include that we already have the boarding house visitor accommodations and the bed and breakfast, but they're all limited in their zoning. And I want to know how many we have and whether they're charged and what our enforcement is. So if you could find out that information as well, I would appreciate it.
We'll do our best to provide that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Along those same lines, I appreciate that we are moving forward with taking care of that one that has been problematic. And I'm assuming that part of the reason we're moving forward on these regulations is because of that one has maybe precipitated this. Is that correct?
We actually have been working on the regs going back to 2017. So it's taken a while, but it does predate this one.
Okay, so going back to the regulations since 2017 about trying to deal with this, or planning and zoning?
Planning and zoning drafting regulations.
Okay.
Deal with short-term rentals.
Okay. All right, then my next question also is the short-term rental town hall meeting tomorrow evening. Is that town hall style? So that when people come, they will be able to ask questions. Everybody in the room will hear the questions and the answers?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Others want to ask questions? I did want to say that I had reported several folks who were listed under VRBO and Airbnb dating back to 2011, 12, I believe. And so I think there's been a shift in the way in which we've interpreted the code, and it would be helpful to me to have written up clearly what is it that we currently think stands in court. We had a case that I think Councilmember Barentine is probably more familiar with, which just keeps coming up, where we did have a boarding house situation and it was ruled in our favor of what we interpreted the code at that point. So it would be helpful to me, and I would imagine, I mean, others can weigh in on this if we have enough to ask for it, to find out what that is currently and where we believe it's got strong legs on it and where it doesn't anymore. Because I know people were asked to stop doing short-term overnight accommodations in one area. So, Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. At one point in our summary, it identifies approximately 130 short-term rentals that are advertised within and surrounding Englewood. Of those 130, do you know how many are within the municipality, approximately?
Most of they don't give their address other than Englewood. So we could be speaking towards the part of Englewood that's east of us, or not municipal Englewood. Yeah.
And to that note, and then the next portion of the summary gets into violations and compliance. Am I to understand then that really the investigations or those instances where you consider enforcement or approaches to enforcement, those take place when a citizen triggers that by complaint? It isn't scouring the internet and just kind of thinking out address.
Complaint-based.
I think that summarizes it for now. I guess it'd be one final question. It sounds like P and Z language is forthcoming. Is some sort of a recommendation of short-term rentals, is that done at this point in time and it's just a matter of how that language will appear, or could we still see something that says P and Z does not recommend STRs at all?
The language is draft. It is not final, so it could change between what's currently draft form and the time it gets here.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Member Barentine.
I appreciate the mayor bringing up that one particular case, because now as I remember it, I believe boarding houses were legal, and then they were not, even in the section where it was zoned for this particular case. Now, whether that was just to go ahead and take care of this one particular case for whatever reason or not, but I think that there might have been a resolution to where we stopped that kind of short-term rental, even in the, I think it's MUB area zoning where it was legal before. And obviously my concern is trying to see whether this is even doable in R1C and continuing to change the neighborhood. So if you could refresh my memory on that case when you have an opportunity, and the standing, which I think the mayor asked for also, of where that even stands for boarding houses, because I think that they got rid of that. Okay, thank you.
I'll research that.
Others? So did you want any, it was totally informational tonight. It said direction too, but we don't need anything in particular. Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Our next item is Code Enforcement Advisory Commission and the...
Can I ask a point of information? Are we supposed to give them information on whether we intend to attend this meeting tomorrow, or does it matter?
It's public, right?
Well, most meetings are, but I don't know if the city attorney wants to know whether more than one of us is going to attend, whether that will matter.
Could I ask the city clerk, is this officially posted? So the answer is yes, it is posted, so as many city council members as want to attend could.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize.
Sure. Code Enforcement Advisory Committee. I think we were... Sorry, I'm trying to eat. I didn't get much today. So we are at a point where we need to decide whether we need to make some changes to any of the things that might have been submitted. And City Attorney, would you want to give any perspective on this at this point?
There were 3 respondents. 2 made it into the packet. 1 came in a little bit later, but there were all 3 respondents were positive. 1 respondent made a few grammar changes, and other than that, there were no requests for any major changes to the draft language at this point that were supplied by council.
Great, thank you. That helps to make sure. So I think, Council, what we need to do is decide if we think that this is an adequate document at this point, and this would be what we work forward on, and then also, would this be the document that we'd send to Code Enforcement at their next meeting that was scheduled at the 8-week mark? So weigh in on that. What do you think? Member Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe this update that was presented in our packet, as I did back the last time I reviewed this, is accurate, it's succinct, I think it's clear. It feels as though it aligns very clearly with and appropriately with what will enable this advisory group to support the department in providing a safer and more better serviced community. I think it's great. I think it's to the point. I don't think there's anything that needs to be removed or added. I loved it, actually.
Great. Member Martinez.
Thank you. I am in favor of all the proposed updates. I think it's a lot more clear and concise, like was mentioned by Councilmember Week, so I'm in favor of seeing this move forward with the proposed updated language.
Member Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I was the late return there, and there was just a couple points of clarification on the language. Nothing that shouldn't withhold it from moving forward. But if I'm understanding as well correctly, this would move forward for CEAC's consideration. Then they would, and then what happens at that point? Do they make recommendations back? I'm unclear what the next the process is once it goes to them.
So I think at the last meeting, what I was hearing everyone wanting, or the majority wanting, is to have them at least give us some feedback on it. We're the final deciders. They don't vote on this or decide one, but we do want their feedback. So look at it so far, and then we we could vote on it in the next 2 weeks, but that would not necessarily give them a chance to give feedback. So I heard last time that we wanted to do it sort of simultaneously, and tonight looks like it's going a little faster anyway.
You bet. That amenable to me, and then that gives some time on that clarification that I was wondering about as well. So, yep, I support.
Does that make sense then?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Member Sierra?
I'm supportive of the proposed update as well, and as well as just bringing it forward to the CAC and having their review of the information.
Mayor Barentine?
I believe that it was pretty well-written document, pretty clear for an advisory board that we were expecting to kind of be in the middle between council and the community and try very hard to get as much information from the community and have a working relationship. I believe that we ought to change the neighborhood services. I think that's the only thing that I would agree to, and I'm looking forward to the committee going ahead and having input on it as I think they should. I think the rest of it is a lot of very political maneuvering, trying to control a board, and in some contentious times where code enforcement is coming under some pretty heavy fire, probably rightfully so, and more council trying to dictate what they want to hear from them instead of fixing some of the problems. But I'm for it going forward to the board.
Anybody else have comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I also am for this going forward to the board. I do have some issues with certain aspects of this. I do believe it will make the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee's job more difficult. I believe that board was put in place to advise City Council of what the citizens in this city want, and I believe that some of these changes are going to hamstring their ability to do that. I would like for the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee to take a look at this and make comments. It's pretty easy for all of us to sit here who have not sat on that board and do not know what their job is to say that this is great. It is not. I believe that there are some changes that do need to be made to update this, like neighborhood services change to code enforcement itself, but that's just what I think. And having been, I would like to say this, having been on that committee since I've been on council, for the first time that I've been on this committee, they have actually gotten things done. And I find it very interesting that the mayor shared last week that members of the community were a little bit concerned that code enforcement themselves shut down. You want to know my opinion? I think they did, because they didn't have anybody keeping their eyes on them. So I'm pretty frustrated about what this has been a political move, and it is very frustrating. But I would like the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee to have an opportunity to look at it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilmember Sierra.
Not sure if this is the right forum for this, but I believe it was the last council meeting where it was mentioned that we are hiring a 5th code enforcement officer. So is it possible to make a council request to bring back the chief of police and have him explain how he's going to take advantage of the additional headcount, and just understand if there's going to be room for more proactive policies that other cities are making in terms of code enforcement, and such as, you know, just picking a specific date that, you know, that they'll be going down the alley and looking for something in particular, and just giving the community a heads up that that is something that they should be aware of. So just things like that, if we can have the chief of police and just explain what the plan forward is with this new headcount.
Thank you. Others made council requests tonight. I think it's very appropriate, so I think that's fine. We're almost done. I wanted to also say that I think that this is well written. I think it's clear. I do believe that there is a misunderstanding about what the role of the Code Enforcement Committee is and how it should interface with the city, and I think this helps to declare it a little bit better. And for those that did call me last week who were concerned about people on code enforcement telling them that there isn't anything being done for code, while they're not on, while they're not operating, I think we should probably maybe find out how many code violations have been written up. I don't need to know what they all are, but as a council request to see if that has actually been the case, that there's not been any enforcement of code since we put them on a hiatus. I know people in my neighborhood that got code violations, so I know that it's been done, but it'd be nice to know what the norms are, if that's possible. I don't think this is political, but it could become that. I'm trying to make this better. I mean, for myself, I want this to be clear. I don't think anyone should have to serve on a committee where there's some contention over what their roles are or some confusion. I've served on a lot of boards and commissions for this city, and it's frustrating for all of us when we do to not have it clear and know exactly what the roles are. So I welcome this to be that, and I think most, sure adults want that as well. So I'm hoping that we'll get good feedback and helpful feedback, and we can move this forward. Yes.
Mayor Olson?
Yes.
I confirm with council that it would be appropriate for my office to send this document on to the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee and ask them to take a look at it and report back through the liaisons when they've had a chance to do so.
That makes sense. So you're asking if you should send them a letter to let them know and then send this with it. We want you to meet at your next meeting, and this is what we'd like you to work on. Okay, yep, I think that's what we were all agreeing to.
I'll follow up accordingly then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sending the email. All right, we'll adjourn and recess back here in a few minutes for the regular meeting.
Yeah.
Hi there.